I'm recording. They're saying lots of gems here, and I don't want to lose them. So,
Oh, okay. No, it's fine. It's all right. Let me just hit the OK button. Yeah, that's cool. I think that's something to think about when because you're presenting a culture in a way, or representing culture through the book, through the art of that country, and and from a traditional perspective, there is that relationship between, or are a lot of stories of students, almost tricking their master into taking them as a student. Like a student who's like just like the dog's body around the house and doing the washing up, but out the
yeah,
back he'd be practicing the forms, without being noticed. And then eventually, there's all of that sort of stuff going on.
yeah,
And that's makes it a little bit more, that enriches the story and the mythology.
yeah,
And I get why some people are saying crane,
mm,
um, because the crane is an animal that has like dragon and phoenix, it has a mystical connection to, for example, in traditional folklore, cranes are immortal. They're immortal birds, and
correct.
they carry messengers from Earth to the gods. So they have that. They very much have that kind of status.
Yeah,
Of and But then again, within all of the internal arts, there are crane and eagle and monkey forms. So another perspective could be, well, if you're having a monkey, it could be any animal that is,
kung fu
uh,
panda.
yeah, you know what I mean. So I think you just choose. I think I liked the image of the eagle, because I think the difference between, for me, the eagle and the crane is that the crane isn't necessarily gonna land and have a conversation with a monkey, in my imagination.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas an eagle, I can imagine an eagle coming down and sitting on a branch and thinking,
Could
am I
be.
am I going to eat you or talk to you? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can sort of see
It's
that
interesting to pick up on the fables because somebody said to me like there should be a series. So like the monkey meets the eagle, then
Yeah,
perhaps meets the crane, like
yeah,
story, and then maybe meets the bear or
yeah. Can different animal, and learns.
deer. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
build up on it.
Learns the different movements from the different animals.
Cool.
That's also that I mean that's quite amazing. I think that idea.
Yeah, that's where I want to take it.
Yeah,
I want it so that you can read the book as an
yeah,
adult.
yeah,
And, oh, oh, that's interesting. But as a
yeah,
child, it's a story that's fun.
yeah, yeah. So if that's the intention, then there needs to be more substance
Yeah.
to, I think,
Yeah.
because I think for an adult to be engaged,
Yes.
they need a little bit more
Yeah.
stuff to think about and process. And
Yeah.
you know, I think that's just the nature. Whereas children, although they will question things, obviously, but they do tend to accept, if it's something's written as a part of the story, they'll be like, oh yeah, of course,
Yeah.
of, you know,
Yeah.
of course the eagle and the monkey are having a chat. There's no, there's it would make sense to them, but an adult needs a little bit more sort of background and understanding, I think.
Yeah.
I did like it though. I thought it was really great. I think, like I said, for me, I felt that it was part of a series of stories which like I really, in terms of doing something that is, you know, that you're trying to get across that level of sort of mental, physical cultivation through a practice.
I kind of want to
yeah,
write maybe a prologue or a preface to the book, having been. So what I wanted to say is this is episode 32 of Cup of Chi. So I kind of didn't do the intro, but I thought I'm going to keep in this information here and for people, because to let people know I am working on a book. My Dan has helped.
Yeah.
And Brierley I've known since 2009.
Wow.
And to let you know, Dan was my first Neigong teacher, because mainly I've been learning Qigong with the other instructor. And I had done Qigong before, albeit variations on cosmic stuff and things that people told me that were good to do. But I had done more formally 8 brocades in the 90s as part of the. So, I mean, again, I mean, this is a podcast we may have to do several times, because Dan has close to 40 years now experience in some level of it.
Yeah, I know. Crazy.
And it's crazy. And like I was saying this to my colleagues in the US and in Malaysia and more recently the Netherlands. And I think there's an interest to. So my job at the moment with Cup of Chi, the purpose of it, and people who watch the channel and tune in, it's fairly humble. We don't get thousands and thousands of followers, but we do have a following on different platforms. And our purpose is to help people, like a cup of chi, nourish themselves every day with a little bit of information, and also to meet people that perhaps they want to follow, or perhaps they want to learn more from you about what you do. So that was my purpose, as an information sharer.
Yeah.
So my experience was, I remember my son had been born. He was probably close to maybe 12 months old nearly. And I was looking through this brochure that I'd ordered online for the college that you were working with at the time. And what drew me to it was the 5-element symbol. And it kept calling to me and kept calling to me. And I remember my wife, who you've met, Sheaf, a few times, of course. And she said, if you do this course now, this is the last big course you're going to do.
Yeah.
Party. And it just felt the right thing to do. And I know it was after about year 2 that we kind of clicked and bonded more. But I would like the viewers to know, or the listeners to know, how stiff and awkward and shoulder-led I was when you first met me.
You really want me to go there?
Yeah.
Man. Okay. It was a challenge, let's put it that way. I think the thing is, Anthony, because you're someone, you've always been like, this journey is old for you, it's probably in lifetimes in a way, but certainly in this life it's old. So even though when I met you, your physical level in terms of embodiment, flexibility, the kind of relationship between upper and lower body was not developed. And like you say, though, you were very much shoulder-led. You'd done a lot of hard martial arts for a long time. You got to a high level of practice, and that affects the body, and it affects how you move. And I think this is, which kind of leads me into one of my particular aims with this work, is that it's so diverse. The internal arts are so diverse. Martial arts are so diverse. I mean, anyone who's following or practicing martial art will understand that there are hundreds of thousands of different martial arts, different ways, theories about moving, ways to breathe, ways to move your body, and they all have a place.
Mm.
And I think so this is just my opinion. One of the things that led me from my own practice in martial arts into Qigong and then Neigong and sort of roundabout back to martial arts in a sort of, going from one approach, which was much harder, and then learning to soften, and then learning to become internal, or learning the steps to becoming more internal, and then understanding that is as an ongoing journey. There's no arrival point.
Yeah.
When you go into Neigong, when you go into the internal arts, it's an individual's imagination and beliefs and desires that create the limit for them.
Mm-hmm.
And you quite often people come in, me included, come in with a sort of a lot of ideas about what I thought I was going to achieve, or what I thought I was going to get. I was very interested from a child, very interested in mysticism and spirituality, and always had been drawn into towards different cultures, but had different ways of describing things, and and then exploring in my own way some of certainly in the 80s, where there was kind of an explosion of interest in what turned into the sort of new age way of viewing things, and psychic energy and spiritual energy and healing forces and things like that, which was sort of exploded, and it's still that ripple is still going. It's transforming and changing into something, I think, much more evolved. But as with everything that comes into our consciousness, particularly in the West, because I can't really talk about other cultures, but particularly in the West, is that it's like the environment that we're brought up in, the culture that we're born into. We've had generations of ways of thinking about life, about status, about your place in life, your religion, and that's very defined. It has been historically very much like, it's this box, and you don't really deviate from the box, because if you deviate from that box, you're either losing your mind, or you're going into the dark side or something. There's all of that. So that those boundaries were very rigid. And so in order for those boundaries to start to soften and dissolve or break and blow apart, there needed to be a sort of an explosion of ideas and thoughts and connections. And also through, I guess through the 70s, 80s and 90s, a greater connection with Western, certainly I grew up in London, so in London, with other cultures like China and Indonesia, Japan. I mean, the Japanese martial arts have been taught in London, certainly since the 50s. I know my dad was practicing judo in the 50s with a Japanese sensei. So
the journey has been quite, I mean, it's probably too huge to cover in 1 hour, but started in the Japanese arts and energy then at a young age. You then moved into a Salat, which was, for all intents and purposes, more spiritual. For you. Some interesting, I mean, I know some interesting things from that, and you've tried Wing Chun and other things. What was the kind of I mean, if I mean, we could spend an hour just talking about your journey, but
Yeah, I know.
what were the peak, like, what was that time when you would say, okay, yeah, my first experience of Aikido or my first experience of Salat, but it was all leading you towards that journey? Because I mean, when I work with you and when we do work together and when I train,
Mm,
it's a completely different feeling to the other people that I work with.
yeah, yeah,
It's a hell of a lot of spiritual energy
yeah,
without the woo woo. I mean, the
yeah.
woo woo's there if you want to go there, but it's
Mm,
a lot of, you carry that with you quite strong. It's
mm,
like very
mm,
evolved.
mm,
It's a very evolved type of work
mm,
with no boundaries.
mm,
Um, and what I enjoy when I work with you is you allow people to go through the exploration.
mm,
Whereas some teachers, like some of the more recently, I've been training with like I wouldn't really say traditional, but there is a tradition rooted in the Shaolin that comes with it.
mm, mm.
They're very precise.
Yeah, yeah.
But also, because they're not from China per se,
Mm,
they're
mm,
also really open, so you can ask them a lot
mm,
of questions.
mm,
But what I wanted to say to the viewers was, when I trained with you over the 4 years, the evolution was a lot faster
mm,
because the information was readily accessible. It wasn't hidden,
mm.
you know.
Yeah.
And I'm sure in your journey, you've kind of gone like, how does that work? And then it's
Mm,
like, just keep doing it until you find out
mm.
for yourself. But I
Yeah.
think what we're going through is this realization from Westerners is we can't wait 10 years to get
No,
Tai Chi or
no. And I think that's happening in Asia as well. And in Asia there's a lot of rejection of traditional arts because of that mindset. And I think you have to look at and before going to my stuff, you have to look at the kind of origin of things and how they developed and how they evolved. And you have to remember that fundamentally, teaching of martial arts, internal arts, unless you were in a temple, if you were learning from your local, it was a business. It's a business. Now, there's a huge amount of social formality so the teacher, the master, the disciples, the inside students, the students that are advancing, and then the public. That in itself can take years and years and years, and you may never get to that point where you're considered family, or
yeah.
even if that's the lineage that you're practicing. The other thing to remember is that a lot of these arts evolved so they evolved throughout periods of conflict. The conflict and also an explosion of spiritual beliefs like Confucianism, Taoism, Buddhism, of course, Christianity as well. All that whole melting pot. Islam, of course, is huge in China as well, and they also have martial arts and internal arts that relate very much to their beliefs. The other thing is that the majority of the population of China were working on the land, and they had hard physical jobs, hard physical lives they led. So when they gave time to internal arts or martial arts, that was a big deal. And then the teacher that you followed, that was your guide, because your life up until that point would have been relatively contained within a kind of small environment, a village or a town, the belief systems of those people that you lived and grew up with. So when people talk about lineage is important, because it's important to understand where things have come from. But that's it. When things are presented in a box with no deviation from that box, that's when I start getting twitchy, because that's when I start thinking, really? So you've got the answers, but that person over there who's also got their box. They don't. But if you
Mm.
go there, they've got the answers, you know. And so it was very compartmentalized and very separate, even though ultimately all this stuff is going in the same direction.
Mm.
But it's a language that's used, and it's the way of
Yeah.
understanding and interpreting and so on and so on. And so you have to give respect to that and to the ancestors and the teachers of the past and the way because they were creating these wonderful arts that have come through time that we're still exploring. So, but at the same time, the world has changed, dramatically changed. And so, and people's awareness, the amount of information that people have because of the internet and all of that, you know, is just completely different. So when I started my first, to go back to what you first asked, my first introduction into actually practicing martial art rather than thinking about it or reading about it or watching Bruce Lee on TV was Aikido. And that was really because my dad, because I was talking to him, that he's the only person that I knew who actually practiced a martial art, and like I said, he was judo, and he said to me, do Aikido, because I was thinking judo actually at that point.
Yeah.
And he was like, no, don't do judo, do Aikido. That would be better for you. It's it's a different way of moving, he just thought it would suit me better. And his teacher, who wasn't teaching at the time, taught both. And my dad witnessed judo, Aikido at the very early start of it, in its evolution. So I think it was still then had a lot more. It was still close to its roots. It had a lot more practical ideology, I guess, than yeah. And he just loved the way the Aikido, when the sensei was teaching the Aikido class, the way people moved and the way they rolled, where he was in love with judo, but it was very much, judo and, but he liked that. But he just loved the flow of the, and the first demonstration he saw was people being thrown on, it was in a car park and it was on concrete and they were kind of rolling and bouncing, and all of that. And I was, wow, that sounds pretty cool. So I that was the push to or the put the seed of Aikido into and then when I went to the class, and initially I loved it. I really, really enjoyed the whole ritual of doing a class, from going in and bowing, putting the gi on, and bowing when you go in, and the meditation that we did at the beginning, and then the forms that we practiced was great. But they kept talking about ki, and I was very curious about ki, because when it's like a way of translating Aikido is the way of ki, or chi if you want, but the way of ki in Japanese. And I was like, well, what's this thing? What's that bit? What? And they were like, don't worry about it. Don't think about it. You don't need to. That's just, you don't need to go there. But I got kind of locked into that and was very interested in that, and started to look at Sensei Moroho's son, Kishima. I can't remember. I'm going to say it wrong, so I won't say it. It was a long time ago. But anyway, his son, who was developing, he was more interested in the chi side, or ki side of it. So I started reading a lot about him, and that led me into a whole other journey of someone I met who was then practicing shiatsu. So I wanted to go and learn shiatsu, because that was all about ki and moving chi and the 5 elements and all of that. And this was all completely new to me. It was like another language, but it was really exciting and really interesting. And so I think that that step into that class was, for me, it was like that was a door opening, and that was both exciting and frustrating, because I wanted to talk to the teachers about these things, but they really wouldn't. You know, they probably thought, oh, just an annoying youth, go away, go, you know, do you know what I mean? But I want, so that started the journey of that into internal arts, I guess. But when I did my shiatsu training, that's when I first met Qigong. The teacher we used to do Qigong before we did stretching stuff before, and then before practicing, we always did a bit of Qigong before. And so that was like, then I had this Qi and Qi, and you know, because he was talking about Qigong, but he was teaching us about the movement, flow of Qi through the body, and I was just trying to understand what it was. It took me a while to sort of work out that, okay, it's the same thing, it's not a separate force. And that, you know, and then that led into me exploring a variety of different arts and approaches, always with this idea of like, what you know, what's going on and how does it affect me? And as a younger man, I was waiting for the sort of magic to happen. I was kind of, you know, I really was convinced that I was going to, you know, beam light out of my hands, and you know, that was my sort of, that's what I wanted. I wanted to connect to the magic, the spirituality of the environment, of the world, of the earth. And I grew up in a family my dad was very immersed in Celtic philosophy and spirituality, and Anglo-Saxon philosophy and spirituality and shamanism, and you know, and so he gave me a lot of, even as a kid growing up, he gave me lots of different sort of books to even really talk to me about it. He would just give me these things to, you know, have a look at. And but we'd always, like, as a family, we'd be in standing stones, or we'd walk ancient pathways around Britain, and you know, and he'd be able to sort of color in the or keep us kids, or certainly me, interested by bringing stories of, you know, land and relationship to land, and the standing stones and the planets and all of that. So I was kind of already had that input. So I guess that just sort of translated into this move towards the initially Japanese, and then Chinese, and then arts, and then ultimately Indonesian was, I think, when I then, because I met some amazing internal arts teachers of Tai Chi and practicing Neigong and Qigong, but didn't really understand it, or wasn't so connected at that time. I was still wanting to sort of hit things, really. And so, yeah, so, you know, some Kung Fu styles, some, I explored a lot. I've definitely been a seeker. You know, I went to a lot of different classes, different approaches, and it also including things like yoga and, you know, that kind of stuff. But it wasn't until I went to my Silat class, and Silat had become, in my mind, like I'd read a lot about it in martial arts magazines that you used to be able to get in those days, which don't really exist anymore. And Silat was like, what is this? You know, this is just seems like another level. And how can I find, you can't, you know, and everything that I read was that you can't find a teacher. You can't just turn up at a class. If you're gonna learn it, the teacher will invite you somehow. You'll come across, you'll join, you know, cross paths, and they'll invite you in some way. You know, and no one at that time was teaching openly in London. There were no Silat classes that were advertised in London. It was pretty much everything else, but Silat, I couldn't find it, you know. And there was no internet then, so you couldn't kind of Google stuff and, you know, check it out. You had to do it through publications, you know, newspapers and magazines and stuff. And everything I knew about it was leaning me towards Malaysian Silat. And I ended up finding a Indonesian Silat teacher, and I didn't even realize there was a difference. But then, like all of these things, I mean, that came about because literally I went to a studio where there were lots of other things going on, and I just got the what's going on, and there was this thing, Purisadiri, and I thought, well, that sounds interesting. What's that? And I met the teacher, who was there, Masoto, who became my teacher, and he, you know, I asked about it, and he said, oh, you know, it's a Silat class. And I was like, oh, you know, it's like the stars have aligned. Here we go. And I said, oh, you know, I was ready to go there, and he said, no, you can't. He said, come back in a week, and then, you know, we'll take it from there. So I went away, came back a week later, and he actually turned me away again. He said, "Oh, sorry, we've got some visitors over, so you can't, you know, come back next week." And I went back the next week, and then that was another pivotal moment, because from that point, I think everything completely changed for me. In terms of my understanding of internal arts, my understanding of martial arts, my understanding of spirituality, it just completely changed, because these are the kind of things I'd never really considered. You know, for example, if your focus is if you have one kind of focus, so spirituality, energy, well, that's two, isn't it? But say energy, spirituality is part of the same thing. And in my mind, there could not be, I did not entertain that there could be a flip side to that, which was a darker way of exploring those things. And certainly within the Silat tradition, and in Silat there are hundreds and hundreds of styles, like Kung Fu. Silat, the word Silat means fighting art, or fighting. Pencak, I didn't do Pencak, but Pencak, which is the one that you see mostly advertised these days, is art. So that's where they have a lot more of movement arts that are like katas and like kind of forms of qigong, I suppose, in a way, where they're moving to music, and it's very theatrical in a way, the way it's presented. And those are the things that they would go out on a Saturday afternoon and do in the village. You know, it's like, come to our school because we move like this. You know, it's all that stuff. So my style, the style that I learned, was Purisadiri, and Purisadiri is a rough translation means self-shield, or shield, like you become a shield rather than a sword or an axe, a shield. which took me a while to sort of get my head around. How's that? How can, you know, I can understand it from a defensive perspective, but it's only really later on that I understood the shield as a weapon. You know, that's a whole other thing. But anyway, so, and my teacher Masato Sohayono, direct lineage from the Grandmaster, direct. He was in that circle, teaching in London to a kind of small group of students. And I stayed with him. I learned over an 18-year period. I had 14 years of with him, like going 2 or 3 times a week to teach, and also, you know, my own evolution in that. And then a couple of periods where I had to stop for a bit and then start again, start like that, and that kind of thing. So over an 18-year period, we're still in touch. We still have connection, but it's very different. It's a very different thing now. But and he, I think, and the experiences that I had with him and the teachers that I met through him, is really dramatically changed how I view things and how I do things, how I move. And you know, one of the things, like the first thing he said to me when I came in, because I've been doing the shiatsu and I've been doing healing and other things like that, was like, you have to stop. You have to stop doing that. And I was outraged. You know, I was like, what? How can? He said, you have to stop for 1 year. You have to stop. And I thought, I also at that point had been doing, you know, I'd been doing work, mediumship, giving readings to people and doing that kind of thing. And he was like, just stop it all, you know. And I was just, but I absolutely stopped. Although I was really frustrated and really angry about it, I stopped. And it was only in doing that I understood why he asked me to stop doing it. And I think that was an invaluable lesson, because, and that in itself informed my understanding of internal arts and energy and you know, in wider sense, healing, spirituality. Because as a Westerner, you know, we tend to, spirituality, martial arts, internal arts, qigong, it's a bit like going into a sweet shop with lots of really nice, shiny, colorful wrappers, and different teachers present things in different ways. Some a little bit misleading, some without much depth, but they, you know, it's like, this is going to take you to this place, this will give you this will, you know, and it's all like, wow, you know. And we can cherry pick, you know, we have that, you know, which is, there are pros and cons to that. One is that the one con is that you can go down very into places that aren't really going to get you anywhere. There equally there is a potential for burnout, for, you know, all sorts of other things, health issues to come up, because the fundamental thing really is that we have this vessel. This is an energetic system. It's a form of a series of vibrations. Everything is vibrating at slightly different resonances, but on the whole, it's fairly harmonious until we have some sort of issue. You know, like if you hurt yourself or something like that, then that creates a sort of a deviation in that vibration, or it changes the vibration that then attracts your attention, which is also a form of vibration, your thoughts and your awareness. And then, you know, and then we seek healing of some sort or other, which is, you know, appropriate action. to resolve the issue. But a lot of the arts, internal arts, they would, if the vehicle, if your body isn't at the best it can be, and everybody's different, so I'm not suggesting that we all have to be in robust health, because it's not really about that. It's a more internal thing. But if your pipes are all kind of furred up, then the energy flowing through those pipes is not going to move freely, and that can create then blockages, and which can manifest as injuries and sore muscles and things like that. There's a process to go through so in order to evolve and develop energetically, you have to work with the corporal, because that's the vehicle that we've been given. So if you're working with, I'm sure some people will disagree, but this is my experience. And if you're doing an art that involves moving the body, so Qigong is a good introduction in a way. It's a good way of like opening, moving, learning about the elements, learning how to breathe, moving your body. It's a way of getting you into a good place. And then, Neigong can take you into another place where a lot of the things that you learn in Qigong don't really apply in a way. I hope this is making sense. I feel a bit like I'm waffling.
No, I mean, I can't remember how many years it's been since we worked together, but I mean, I've been on a bit of a journey myself with it.
Yeah.
I've been experimenting and learning new things. And the lesson that's coming up very clearly is, pretty much all Qigongs that we see now that are out there on the interweb will be a variation on something from a martial art, perhaps like what we would call a traditional Qigong.
Yeah.
What the masters I've been learning from, and they've been teaching some stuff, is that pretty much it all comes from either Dao Yin or Neigong. So pretty much Qigong as a word, as you know, it's a modern word.
Yeah.
Relative, it's like saying yoga.
Yeah, exactly. That's another thing. Yeah.
People, it is. I mean, when you first met me, I was really loved putting things in boxes. But there is a definite difference. I mean, for me, when I do a Qigong form, say if I'm doing Chinese Universe Qigong as a form, that would be for me bringing the Qi in. So bringing it from the outside in towards me and into me, and bringing it in and circulating it in a fairly, a very harmonious, bringing health to the body. For Neigong, for me, I feel is a much harder discipline in that you have to learn to push the energy from the inside out. Like building, as you say, you've got to have the structure has to be rebuilt. Bits of you have to be taken off and restructured and realigned and cleaned up and tight. And one of the key lessons I learned about Neigong is one of the only things you can get better at as you age. And you think about it, like me and you would not be doing CrossFit in our 90s. It's not going to happen. But like we could still be able to generate power and energy, even though our movements might not be very large. I mean, typically, and I know, if you touched hands with any senior masters, some of them don't even get out of their chair.
Yeah.
They'll generate a huge amount of force.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, I definitely feel that. I feel that moment of Salat was like, that was the realization for you that energy and martial arts are intertwined. But there's a spiritual discipline to the meditation, to the stillness.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, that's profound. I mean, that's profound. We had, as a part of my practice, we did lots of different quite wacky things, I think. But just as a sort of daily practice, meditation, and every day,
Yeah.
and but then even my understanding of meditation went out the window when I started doing that, because I used to think, okay, I've got to, I've been going to some like Buddhist temples in London and doing the meditation classes there, and kind of sit for an hour and you do that. And most of my experience, although I enjoyed doing it, was one of like excruciating pain and suffering, really, which is sort of kind of, whereas, Mass would say, 2 minutes. If you can meditate for 2 minutes, that is a high level. You can really meditate for 2 minutes. Sitting for an hour or longer has a purpose. There is a reason for it. It is, but it's not the goal. It's a tool. It's a training. Because understanding, it's a bit like understanding qi, understanding qigong, like you were saying earlier. Qigong is I use that term a lot, but it's also a really annoying term, because it doesn't really mean, like you say, it doesn't really mean anything, And so in my own teaching, when I'm teaching my classes, and I've given conscious movement. That's the sort of strap line that I give my students, which probably annoys them. I don't know, but it's like, because for me, that's what that I'm sure it may evolve, and I might find a more, a term that is even easier to use and remember. But it was just, that's what you're doing, but then understanding, well, okay, what's movement? Consciousness. Those are big lessons. We've got three superpowers as human beings that are chronically underused, I think, or have been developed in certain ways at the expense of the others. Sometimes people get, one or two aligned, but not the third one. So the superpowers that we have, the tools that we have, which are the body is one. Like, so cultivating, developing your body, being as healthy as you can given the vehicle that you're in. So that's very different for everyone, depending on your age, depending on your background, depending on your what you've inherited from your ancestors. So that's not saying we all have to be super fit, super healthy. That's not what I'm saying. But so your body, developing it the best you can with the body that you've given. That's one. That's basic. That's your earth. The second is breath. Breath is a superpower, our ability to breathe. And we, on the whole, ignore it, because it just happens without us thinking about it. So we, unless you have a cold or something, or you're blocked up and you can't breathe, we don't really think about it. If you're doing sort of aerobic exercises or other kind of physical exercise, you kind of will cultivate the breath to a certain extent, but it's very external. So understanding breath, your breath is in every cell of your body. When you breathe consciously, every cell, inside, outside, there isn't a separation. Your breath is your bridge between the internal and the external worlds. Every moment, that's constant, but we don't often really understand or explore the breath. And breathing techniques are a great way to do that, because they create diversity. They force you to breathe in different ways, in different parts of the lungs, to reverse breathe, to breathe into your back, to get the chest moving. Fantastic, great. That in itself is great for your health, physical. but there's, energy is moving in your breath. The fastest, the most direct way to get chi, ki, prana, whatever you want to call it, into your body is through your breath, through your nose. That's it. So that's definitely a superpower that most of us have, but the dial is on sort of 0 or 1.
Yeah.
And then the third one, which is
the gas boiler hasn't come on yet,
Yeah, exactly. And it's also, none of this is linear either. That's the other thing I will say. None of this is about a linear journey. It's like this. It's, and embracing that is important, because otherwise you're going to get frustrated and unhappy about things. But the third one is mind. And our minds are pretty much, unruly teenagers that are kind of doing their own thing and thinking their own thoughts, and so, but if we can direct and focus, even if that is temporary or short amounts of time, then the combination of the body that is being cultivated, the breath that is being cultivated, and the mind, linking those three together, that's another level. And that's really hard. That's why it's it's very hard. Why these arts are hard, they're not hard, they're really simple, but they're really they're really hard, because we've got all this stuff, we've got all this other distraction, we've got all the stuff that we have to do in life. We've got kids, we've got family, we've got ill health, we've got bills to pay, we've got jobs that we're doing, we've got all of this stuff. Is that's all relevant and valid, and also a huge distraction. So working with your mind in small ways to build that up. So simple thing. So if you were to align all three in one go, simple, super simple, just sit, breathe in through your nose. And observe the process. Just 1 or 2 breaths, but the sensation of the air through your nostrils, the way it is drawn into the lungs, where it goes in your lungs, how much capacity do you have, which may change, moment to moment. What moves? How does that feel? Can you keep your mind in that for a single breath without it going off? That's a great, very simple tool, but a great tool to play with. And I emphasize play because I think play is important to we can get very rigid, very serious about this stuff, and ultimately that's not helpful, and that is going to create boundaries and walls. And one of the things that Mass said to me, which was also quite profound, had quite a profound effect on me at the time, was because he would talk about different things, different experiences in Indonesia. Indonesia is one of those countries, one of those places, a lot of Southeast Asia, that's very close to this, very close to nature, very close to the energy of the planet. And he would say, every stone, every plant, everything in nature has energy. We can kind of understand that, but also not only has energy, but also has spiritual protection. So starting to understand, really respect your environment Like if you want to go and train under a train Qigong, for example, basic Qigong, simple Qigong, standing under a tree or in a field or something like this, sort of ask permission. That was a big thing with him. It's like you ask permission, and you're not necessarily going to hear someone go, yeah, okay, you can do that, but you can just follow that question with, oh, I'm doing this practice. This is for health and well-being, for development, to connect, be closer to nature. And then he would say that in that way, the spirits of the land understand what you're doing, and they will support you in that rather than hinder you. So you won't do your practice and then turn around and trip over, a cow pat or
yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's kind of simplistic.
I get it. I mean, when we were learning the standing sets years ago, I actually went to a park. I was living in the south side of Dublin, and it was a nice park. And I stood under a tree, and I was standing. And the following day, I felt incredibly sick, like nauseous, headachy. And I was trying to think about everything that I'd eaten, anything that I'd taken, was there anything herbs? And then this thought came into my head was, the tree was a little bit upset that you had the audacity to try and imitate it by standing underneath it without asking permission. Exactly that. And then so it gave me a kind of a lesson in ego.
Well, there you go. That's it. That's human beings. So that is human beings. And the other thing he used to say to me is when you cultivate your energy, when you're developing your energy, you become attractive to other energy. As the greater you resonate, you vibrate, the brighter your light, the more you're going to attract. That attraction can be both positive and negative.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And so you can also, in cultivating that, be very open and thinking, this is wonderful, I'm very, very spiritual, very energized and all this. But you can also then attract, as you experience, that feeling of, some disharmony.
Yeah. No.
And he said, I won't go into this now because that's a whole other thing. But in an experience that I had whilst we were in Indonesia together training, and I had this kind of dynamic happen, and he said, I was lucky because in general, nature is kind of indifferent to us. Some of it likes us, some of it really doesn't, and some of it is like, well, yeah, okay, they're just a part of the landscape. They're like animals moving around, like the mice and the foxes and what have you, which is cool. But then he would say, yeah, but you're on another level, so you still respect, you still ask, because we're evolving in this practice. But equally, there is dark energy. There are places in the planet that have experienced a lot of tragedy over time. That dark energy is still there in some way. That can affect you. The spirits that are attracted to that will resonate with that. That can affect you. That can be very unhelpful, very bad. Lots of maybe, mental illness, psychosis, physical illness, stuff like that, And so when there has to be an opening when you practice, but there equally has to be a closing.
Yeah.
Consciously closing, your flow is like going, okay, I'm cultivating, but now this is my boundary. That's important. And there are lots of different ways of doing that, but it's an important thing to think about. And for, people watching who have some kind of practice, already, I would encourage them to have some kind of process, word, thought, like before they start and when they finish, or movement. You know, it can be a movement. This is me opening and I'm getting ready to practice. This is me closing, grounding, I'm finishing practice. You know, to have that, because when you're sensitizing yourself, which is what you're doing, and like anything, when you learn something new, we tend to be very open. Then we're opening doors, because we want to receive. We want to receive the information on the flow, which is great. And at some point that will balance out and regulate, so that it might be a little less dramatic or a little less exciting, but it'll be more consistent and more continuous. But just having that, this is when I open, and part of doing the practice of Hening, which is the kind of meditation that we did, I was doing every day. Hening was kind of the opening as well, and then we had another practice for closing. So there's a beginning, there's a bit in the middle. It might only be a minute. You might be, okay, I'm doing Hening, but now I've got to go to work, so I'm going to do closing, and then I'm going to go.
Yeah.
And the last thing, I know you've got to get off, so we probably haven't got much time. But the last thing is, when in our various conversations with him, he would we could talk if you came with the question, we could talk about things, but he would very, very rarely offer things without there being a question, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. But he would used to say, I'm not going to tell you what you should feel or how you should feel, or if you're going to see colors, or if you're going to feel this, or if whatever. Because if I tell you, you do this practice and this is what you'll get, that will be your expectation. So you'll be seeking that. And that might not be your way of interpreting or understanding or feeling or connecting. Because we're all different, we all have different ways. Some people are very visual, some people are very mental, some people are much more, physical. There's just simple, but there are thousands of different ways that if you can guide, it's that challenge between sort of guiding and directing. And guiding is where you offer a path, and then you're there to have conversations when they come up. Directing is where you tell someone, well, this is your A, that's your B.
Yeah.
And then perhaps you're setting up a blockage in that person, because they will be looking for B, but maybe they're missing a whole other alphabet that's going on for them.
Yeah.
So
that's talk about that, because recently been learning Yan Shao Gong, which is it's basically the Neigong of two arts that's come together, and there's a roadmap to it, 6-stage roadmap. And the first part of that is, do you have basic strength? Like, can you climb the stairs? Can you do daily activities, without much effort? And then the second part is building your jin, which is your tendon power. So, and then it goes on, and then you feel the chi, and then the mind, and then the shed, and then emptiness. And the particular master, Yat Bo Hyung, he says, I don't know what the sixth one is. Like, I haven't.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah.
I don't know. There's a great humbleness to that. And I was saying to him, like, well, what's the process of knowing that you're at stage 2 or at stage 3? And he's like, well, actually, saying, I can't tell you when that'll happen. It just happens, And then the funny thing is, you might have 1, 2, and 3 lit up.
Yeah.
But you're still working on 1 and 2. You don't let
Yeah.
go of 1, 2, or 3.
Yeah.
Suddenly, and he says the problem is you get to the mountaintop, and you're like, oh yes. And he says, and then you look over the valley, and then you realize there's a much bigger mountain just
Yeah.
in.
Yeah. You just stepped onto the foothills. Yeah.
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 So, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's really interesting. I have taken that on board from what you taught me, and definitely when I've done workshops in the past, I definitely let people explore that. But to kind of wrap this up, I think we'll
Mm.
need to do part 2 of the
Mm.
podcast. So
Yeah. Great. That would be.
because there's so much to unpack. I mean, 40 years is a hell of a career, with a
Yeah.
lot of information in there, a lot of wisdom, a lot of downloading.
Mm.
But if we were to say, if we could wrap up and give people an idea of your work, your current work is conscious embodied movement, and I know
Yeah.
you've been in Dublin and you were evolving it back then. I mean,
Mm.
not before COVID, but
Mm.
I see that you run online workshops. If people
Yeah.
join
Yeah.
in. You also have face-to-face classes now that you run.
Yeah.
Pretty much given up your clinic work now, and
Yeah.
the emphasis is on teaching and
Yeah.
sharing information. So
Yeah.
how would people get hold of you? Where could they find you to get information? I mean, obviously we can leave the links below the
Yeah.
video,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. So, I mean, my website is danielbrierley.co.uk. Really simple. My Instagram is danielbrierley62. It's all I keep it simple. My name is simple. So probably the easiest, I guess, is the website, and all my classes and courses and things are on there. And I run a training, an in-person training, which is kind of over a year. I take people on a journey. I mean, it's you know it's a good introduction, I'd say, to a variety of different styles and approaches, different breathing techniques and meditation and things like that we do as a part of the journey. Some Neigong as well. I have the classes that I run through the week that are online. They're all on the website. And then I'm doing a series of online workshops that are part of a course, really. So there's this sort of closed group in that sense. And this is the first time I've done this in this format. So this is 6 workshops, 1 a month, and it's a 2.5, 3 hour class. We cover quite a lot in that time, and then people the set they have the session is recorded like this, and then they have that so they can dip in and out and remind themselves of what we've done. This is the first one, so this is a bit of a testing ground. This one is full, so I should say that in advance. But I will be running a one that's more longer. It will be 10 or 12 months. So it's a commitment. It's commitment in time, but and it's for people that already have kind of taken a step. I mean, there are different stages. It's like there's a lot of value in going to a class, developing a commitment. I think a lot of us, myself included, would quite often want to jump steps, and then when you do that, or when I've done that in the past, generally speaking, I have to go back, and then kind of go through the steps. So a class, having a regular practice is really, really important to cultivate. That's part of your self-cultivation, or one's self-cultivation. And there are many, many different ways of doing that, but regular class, my classes, basic classes, are online, and I kind of mix up things that I do. it's limited because it's an hour, and you can only do so much in an hour. And so the online workshop course is taking that deeper, giving people more time, less frequency, but more time. So it's not a weekly thing; it then becomes a monthly thing. But it's all evolving at the moment. I think those are the things that are there, that are in place, that are happening. My next in-person training will start next January. This one is, we're into the third. The next one is the fourth weekend of a series of 10 weekends. They're whole weekends. So it's like from 10 till 5, Saturday, Sunday. So that's a real immersion. That's quite a lot. But things are evolving and changing, and I want to do a lot more stuff. And I do want to do a whole Neigong specific practice, but I'm still working that out. Online, is very convenient, but I do like to see people in person, because I think you know me, one of my big bugbears is the kind of alignment, posture, balance.
Yeah, sure.
And there are many teachers teaching that aspect of the work poorly, I would say, in my experience. And there are many teachers who are teaching it really well as well. But it's the posture, balance, alignment, how to breathe, learning to use your breath and your mind. Body, breath, mind. So cultivating that through a more basic practice, through classes. I know you run classes. People should definitely come and check out. People that are kind of local to you should come to your classes and workshops.
Actually, I haven't really had a chance to do, but I do have people who train with me online, or will come to visit. My house and stay here. So what I wanted to do then is, I would like to invite you to Ireland. So it's been at least, I don't know, I'm going to say 10 or 12.
It's been a while since it's been a while.
I found some videos from 2011 that I can dig.
Oh, wow. Oh my gosh.
The plan is I know you've been back since then, but what I'm probably going to do is, at the bottom of this podcast, is I'll put a registration of interest, and then is there an interest, and then I definitely know people who in Dublin and in Cork, because I teach in Cork, that would be interested in just start that exploration.
I'd love to. I'd really love to. I love it.
So you align with a teacher.
I love it. I love coming. I love it every time I've been over to see you. I love coming to Ireland as well, teaching there. I think, and
there's a lot of spiritual energy here, and a lot of thirst for this kind of knowledge.
Fantastic.
It's now coming back in. Anyways, I need to move.
You've got to get on with stuff.
My daughter from school.
Cool.
We'll wrap up the podcast, and I'll say thanks very much, Dan, for your time.
Thank you.
If you want to check out Dan and what he's been up to, Conscious Embodied Movement, I'll leave his website below. Contact details, email details below. Also, thanks for supporting Cup of Chi. This is episode 32. We'll continue. We're going to get Dan back in the next couple of weeks. I'm going in for an operation, Dan, so I might be able to see you a little bit better in a few weeks. But what we'll do is, after that, we'll get you back in, and we'll do part 2 to see if we expand a little bit more on those concepts.
Fantastic. That would be great.
And let me know. Please leave a comment. Please do the subscribe, all that YouTube, blah, blah, blah. Hit the bell.
Exactly. Blazing. That's what people have to do. Ring the bell, you know,
And I
whatever it
will
is.
say, from a personally perspective, I'm glad that we stayed in contact for so long.
Yeah.
Know many a time you had to put up with me in your house, ranting.
Yeah, but that was all great though. That was fantastic, mate. The conversations that we had. I mean, I don't know, for those of you who don't know Anthony very well, you know, I'm sure there are lots of people who do know you quite well who watch these, but for those of you that don't, I mean, spending an evening with Anthony and chatting is a most enlightening experience. You know, it's really amazing. He's got so much knowledge and wisdom. So it's, you know, it kind of it bounces around the room. It's fantastic. It's really great, very enriching.
But we like to go off on tangents, and
yeah, quite.
So one of my latest traditions before you go, I haven't started doing this on the other podcast, but I figure because you're here and you brought me into the world of Neigong, so let's draw a card for you, Dan, a dragon.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And this is not a reading now, by the way. This is just where the energy of the moment rather than predicting. That's not something I do. It's be interesting to see what comes up for Dan Brierley.
Yeah.
Big journey, Dan.
Yeah.
I mean, people that I always say to people, Dan's the only person I know who looks younger than me and he's 10 years older than me.
Yeah. Well, thank you for saying that. Oh, wow.
So this is the dark blue, the laptop dragon. So
yeah,
this is helps you listen to the voice of the universe, right? So
okay.
Yeah, so what it's saying is that you are accessing even higher codes of information, even more cosmic wisdom, and you're entering now into a higher service. So it's like, if I was to say anything, this is like you getting a high grade in your salat, you know, and been given permission to really
A star.
You know, you've got to go for it now. There's no
yeah.
And blue traditionally is the voice, is the energy communication.
Amazing. Well, it does feel like that to me. I do feel very, I mean, you know, like we said, I know you've got to go, but we have this, I've been working on this stuff for so long in a very personal way, of course, and teaching alongside, as you know, but I think I do feel now that it kind of needs to come out. It is starting to come out. It is expanding, and I'm doing that. But this is my next step in this journey is to put that out more.
There's a book,
be more visible.
Definitely a book coming.
Yeah, absolutely.
If Anya can do it, you can do it.
Oh my word, absolutely.
Right.
Her book just there, by the way.
I see she's subliminally advertising her work.
Yeah.
Right, thank you. I gotta go.
Okay. Yeah, of course. Thank you very much. Yeah, great to chat, Anthony. See you soon. Okay.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, lots of love.